Oh.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. On behalf of the MBDA, we cannot thank our association members, retailers, and deep membership base for continuing to join us, to show up and learn and share and ask questions that we hope are going to improve business practices for all. This is a time to truly network and brainstorm and open yourself up. So the idea of a roundtable is that we are all participating and sharing. And if you have questions, things to add, please do so along the way. This conversation today is centered on fit services and the importance of offering them in your retail environment, especially in the situation we find ourselves in these days. I am beyond thankful to our panel who have volunteered their time to join us to lend insight to the conversation. And let's join, please, me in welcoming a warm welcome to Damon Wyatt, who is the brand business manager for BikeFit. And we have Greg Robideau, PT. He is the executive director of the Serrata International Cycling Institute. Thank you again, both of you, for joining us. You've been definitely great partners of the MBDA. And as I said earlier, the roundtable today is on the importance of bicycle fit in the current retail landscape. And for our retailers who are joining us, and I'm sure we'll have more coming in, I just thought we'd start out with some basic questions for Damon and Greg. And throughout the presentation, as I said, please use the chat or raise your hand or just give a nod if I see someone who wants to jump in and share. This is truly meant to be a, hey, I'm doing this, or hey, have you heard of this, or what do you think about this type of moment? So let's just go through and introduce and kick it off with some basic introductions. Joining us today also is Rochelle Scout, and she is the MBDA Development Director. She's our Zoom master, and she's going to be paying attention to make sure I don't miss any hands up or any questions as well. So Damon, could you start by giving us a little bit more about yourself and your role at BikeFit?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I'm Damon Wyatt. I'm the brand business manager with BikeFit, which is now part of QBP. Just a little background, I'm a little late to cycling. I know some people it's been lifelong. For me, I grew up speed skating, and it was roller speed skating, not the very sexy Olympic ice speed skating. So there was zero glory there and a whole lot of guts. It kind of transitioned from that into cycling at some point because it's not easy to speed skate on the roads. When I got into cycling for a while, I actually frequented bike shops often, got into coffee, and no one mentioned fit to me my entire time in bike shops in 3 different states, which is probably not surprising to all of you, but it was an interesting portion of it. I did race a bit, so shout out to Pacific Northwest people, or is Oregon, Washington. So wonderful places. Actually, that's Maryland. This one's Washington. But actually, at that point, I had an opportunity to change careers around 2016, and I was offered basically like a part-time sales position with BikeFit, which I reluctantly took, knowing nothing about bike fitting, and then spent the next 5 years in an incredible journey of education of going through this company from sales to marketing to web development to inventory management, business operations strategy, you name it, I did it. Before the acquisition happened to QBP. So now with QBP, I think for the BikeFit brand, we're looking just to expand bike fitting and get that information out as much as possible and get more people comfortable and confident on their bikes. So Heather, thank you so much for having me here, and I'm excited to talk to retailers about fit.
Yeah, thank you, Damon. And I want to note that this is being recorded. We have a lot of retailers who are just so busy that they can't show up and dedicate this time during the day, but that they want to look back and watch the recording later. And I'm looking and I'm seeing John Higgins. He is a bicycle fitter who's with us, and Happy Friedman, a bicycle fitter who's with us. So thank you for all the fitters who have joined. Such an important time in our industry to have this conversation. I guess with that, I would just welcome Greg to introduce himself and his role at Serrata International Cycling Institute.
Yeah, well, I'd like to start by saying thank you to Heather and to Rochelle for kindly having me on. I'd also like to, before I talk about myself, I'd like to acknowledge the folks in this room, because there are some of the best minds in bike fitting that have joined this room today. One of my mentors, Parik McGlynn, is here. I would like to say hi to Parik. John Higgins, Paul Swift, Happy Friedman. Guys, thank you for being here. It's amazing to see you, because it's been forever and I miss you all. But thank you very much. And so for those of you who who just happen to be on this, who are not fitters or just retailers, you actually have, in my opinion, some of the best minds in bike fitting in this room right now. So consider yourselves lucky. Not Damon and I hope are considered part of that group, but there's some just some wonderful wealth of knowledge here today, which is just spectacular. So my name is Greg Robideau. I am the executive director of the Serrata International Cycling Institute. I am lucky enough to be able to talk every day about things that I am absolutely passionate about. In addition to teaching bicycle fitting, I also am a physical therapist, and I run the cycling medicine program for Spalding Rehab. And so I treat cyclists and triathletes, as well as doing bike fitting and teaching certification courses. I'm really pleased to be able to talk a little bit about BikeFit today, because it's just it's something that I think really is important for our industry right now. And so I'm thankful to be able to be here and talk with you all today.
Greg, I have goosebumps. You are so right. We have just this powerful, amazing force of bike fitters. I'm looking at the screen in front of me, and I'm thankful for everyone who has shown up. And as I started out saying, let this really be a collective voice for the retailers who are here now, or who can turn in later and learn from this conversation, because it is so important right now. So I'm going to jump in with some questions for Damon and Greg. But as I said, if anyone has anything to add, please. I mean, this is such a powerful group of individuals right here. So Damon, just thinking about some of the positive business aspects to incorporating a fitting program into your retail environment. Can you touch on that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think many of you already know some of this in this process. And I also want to mention, Greg, thanks for thanking all the awesome people we have here. I should mention, I will talk kind of top level with retail and business here. If you do want to get into more of the weeds and specifics, Greg and some of the other great people here are helpful about the mechanics, but I'm definitely gonna do a little more top level business. So let me break business down from just a perspective we see it as kind of 4 parts: in service, parts, loyalty, and referral, which I also think kind of trust and referral connect there. So service itself is an important part of it, because it's that intangible, right? You're getting that hourly service on the P&L that can be part of fitting and the standalone fitting. I think almost the stronger portion and component is that second, and I call it organic parts and accessories. And the reason I call it organic is I don't think business has to be salesy. I don't think business has to be this piece where we're telling someone it's lighter or it's stiffer or it's made of carbon, right? I think this kind of a situation comes in and saying, what are the parts and elements of a bicycle that can be changed, that can be set up for an individual, right? The bike is super symmetrical. The body is wildly asymmetrical. And there really isn't an average, right? Bikes are going to have sizes, potentially based on averages, based on data sets. But that data set is not going to meet the needs of the individual. So the parts piece is giving people an opportunity to try different things. Think stems, handlebars, seat posts, saddles, pedals, shoes, all the places where you have important contact points that can be adjusted to the individual needs. And I think one of these things, again, being organic, is give someone an opportunity to try these things. I know Paul Swift is on here. He always says try. That's his big thing that he likes to say. And I say the same thing. I follow that, and try it, right? Give them an opportunity. You're not saying, oh, buy this cool stem. You're saying, let's try it. Let's have an opportunity. Do you feel better? You as retailers can see people on the bike. You know when someone's arms are wildly locked out, or you see them moving around a lot in their saddle. They're clearly uncomfortable. They're not happy. Give them an opportunity to try something different, and that leads to an organic parts and accessories. Your next part is really loyalty. You know, what are you providing in a fit for somebody, right? You're providing them a service and experience, which I know Heather will talk about later, so I'll try not to bleed topics together. But you're really creating experience for somebody. Somebody's sitting there and you're asking them questions, you're learning about them, you're teaching them about the bike. They have this opportunity to then think, wow, this person provides me with something that I've never received before. I've learned something different from them, and I'm definitely coming back here. I don't know any retail shop owner has ever said to me, I love when somebody comes in and buys something and never comes back. right? I think what we're trying to create here is, what is it the thing that makes this person a lifelong customer? And that's their experience. And connected to that is the final one, which is like, once they trust you and this person is now your customer, what is the things that we do when we have a great retail experience, right? So you think about is we want to tell people, right? So side anecdote, sorry, Heather, I'm going to do this. My wife and I are going through an adoption process. So we're trying to adopt incredible amount of paperwork. Anybody in here who's adopted before knows the situation. And so we're running around trying to get help. And we need notaries. Everything has to be notarized. Every single document notarized left and right, right? So we're running around trying to find a UPS store to do notarization. I don't know about you anywhere else in the US. In Maryland, UPS stores are like, here's your package, here's the price, pay for it, and they kick you out. They don't care. Maybe that just depends on where you go. But we walk into this lowly UPS store on a rainy day. We wait in line. We get to the counter. I'm expecting this guy just to say, go away. And we say, we need a notary. Apologize profusely. Says, I'm really sorry. We have a notary. They're not coming in today. But you know what? Across the street, there's a place that's open 7 days a week. So, and we're like, where? And so the guy gets out from behind the counter. There's a line waiting, takes us out the door and walks us out of the parking lot to show us where the competing business is that has a notary. Now, granted, I get it. Fitting experiences are not my UPS experience, but I literally called my mom and I was like, you got to see this experience I had at UPS. That was nuts. So the idea is that if I have an awesome fit experience, I'm going to share that. And I'd say any of the fitters here, if I asked you this, which I'm not going to do this now because I won't monopolize this, but where do you get most of your business from? Is it from marketing? Is it from SEO? Because every fitter I've talked to says they get it from referral. So that is an incredibly important element, and every one of those will lead to, I think, a better portion of fit in your business.
I love this answer, and congratulations. That's a wonderful personal share. Thank you. And Beth, I see Beth is nodding. Beth is here, a good friend of mine. It's nice to see you, Beth. Yeah, so positive business, positive reasons to add fitting to your business. Greg, anything to add there?
No, I mean, I think Damon really hit the nail on the head with talking about it being experiential. The idea that BikeFit is the culmination of a bunch of, biomechanical markers and, a list of measurements is way underselling what BikeFit is. BikeFit is an experience. BikeFit is a way to bring new people into the fold. It's a way to retain people. And I think at this point in time, not only do we have this opportunity because of the unprecedented growth we've seen in this industry, but also, speaking from the fitness world a little bit, the attrition rate is high in a lot of fitness industries. And many of the people that have gravitated towards cycling right now are coming from more of a fitness industry because they couldn't go to the gym. They couldn't do things like that. And so Fit provides that level of education. It provides that community. It provides an ability for these people to be better educated cyclists, better educated consumers. And I think that's part of your charge. I think that's part of your responsibility as a bike fitter. And if you choose to have a bike fitting program, it's about education. It's about community more so than the result of the fit. Yes, the result of the fit is important. And, having a good process and being consistent with what you do is something that's, at the crux of bike fitting. But what the end user, what that cyclist or bike rider really should understand is that they should feel energized. They should feel like they are a better cyclist for having come to you and gone through that process. And I know I'm kind of echoing what Damon said, but I think that that's one of the most important things is that, yes, there are absolutely financial positives for having a bike fitting program in your bike shop or being an independent bike fitter yourself. But the ancillary of the community that you create, the customers that you create, and their desire to come back to you because you've shared so much with them, I think is the key to this process, is the key to making it successful long term in what you're doing when you're not only doing the bike fit with the individual that you're working with, but also selling the bike fit in the background in your sales staff.
Yeah, and I see, is it I'm sorry,
Sure.
thank you.
Alright.
Sorry.
So I'd just like to layer something on top of that, if I may. I think one of the problems that BikeFit faces worldwide is it's a problem of who ends up fitting. And the problem becomes a lot of the time it's a senior manager in a store. A lot of the times it's somebody who has a lot of other responsibilities or is good at a lot of other things. So fit is something that they're very passionate about at some point, but then it becomes very difficult. And then the secondary part to that is this whole notion of EQ, or emotional intelligence, which is what Damon and Greg have just been talking about. And the biggest challenge I see that we have in BikeFit is we don't have enough gravitas attached to the emotional quotient or the emotional intelligence of the individual doing BikeFit. And you can have an average bike fitter. And I don't mean a bad bike fitter, I mean they're a good fitter. If they have great people skills and they have a great ability to make that client feel amazing, that is not necessarily an innate characteristic. The person in the store who knows everything about this rare, weird, campy derailleur, it can identify the right dropout at 400 meters, that probably not the right person necessarily to be in fit. The person who loves returning emails, the person who's more the chief hug officer than the chief aficionado of everything cycling, that person and their ability to cultivate community and cultivate an amazing experience. I think one of the challenges we're facing in BikeFit right now is we need to cultivate more of that skill set and more of that empathy and that ability and those soft skills. To me, if we have a challenge in the fit industry and in making fit pervade everything we do, from shoes to clothing to saddles to everything, it's about building educated individuals in our chosen madness profession, whatever you want to call it, that really get the experience, are really working in an amazing environment where they can deliver that experience. They have great training, great tools, but fundamentally they're amazing at treating customers really well.
Such an important point. Yeah.
If I could add to that, because that's a wonderful point that Parag has made, but the thing that comes to mind when he talks about that is folks being spread thin, not being able to focus on this. And the one thing that I will say about BikeFit is that BikeFit's not easy. It's not an easy solution. It might be the right solution, but it takes time, it takes attention, it takes a little bit of passion, and without a doubt, you will hear a lot of passion today in discussion about BikeFit. I see it in all of the eyes that are looking back at me right now, and I hear it in the voices that have, it is those of us who are invested in this believe in it wholeheartedly, believe that it will actually lift a cyclist up and improve their experience. People buying a bicycle are investing in a piece of equipment. People that are buying a fit are investing in themselves, and it's something that should not be eschewed or poo-pooed in any way. It is something that is a really important part of this process. And I think in a retail landscape that we're living in, if we can develop excellence there, as Parag had alluded to, it gives folks a real pause as to why they wouldn't come to their local bike shop as opposed to going to the internet or do something like that.
Such an opportunity right now to get these new cyclists set up correctly, but I continue to have conversations with retailers who have put up some barriers to establishing fitting in their stores. We have such a great collection of people in front of us right now. Anything that you could speak on that could help reduce some of these barriers? Any thoughts there, or any retailer who is on who would share some of your perceived barriers to starting with fitting?
One of the barriers that I hear an awful lot about, and I see Happy had his hand up for Happy. Let me finish a thought process, and then I'd love to hear what you had to say. But one of the perceived barriers, or a couple of them, one of them is that that space is an issue, right? Depending upon your shop, if you've got a small local bike shop, you worry about space, and you know, to get started, to get things going, you don't need that much space, and you don't need that much equipment. You do need some education. You do need some passion to do it, and as Porg alluded to, potentially a dedicated person to be doing that. You know, if you're going to deliver an experience, that person needs to be available to deliver that experience. So having somebody at the ready to be able to do that is important. But the space constraints, you know, really aren't that significant. And, you know, a lot of folks that I've spoken to, you know, will come back with, well, you know, my retail space is too valuable to give up space to dedicate to BikeFit. But if you do the math, and you've got somebody dedicated and they're turning people over in a moderate sized shop, if they're doing, you know, 4 bike fits a week at $250, they're making more than a lot of what they're, you know, gross wise, they're making more than what their retail sales for the same amount of space would do. So, you know, on average for $1 million shop, you're looking at about $400 a square foot in 3,100 square feet. You know, at 4 fits a week at $250, you're talking about a gross of 500 a square foot. So, you know, it's a viable thing from a business standpoint as well. And I'd love to hear what Damon has to say on that, because I'm sure his numbers are probably even a little bit more accurate than mine. But
I was actually open with this question. I wanted to hear retailers' barriers. Like I've heard much of the same. I don't want to give kind of like a price per square foot in value. I will share this though. I have a pretty good connection in the industry, and I ask around a lot. And someone in my similar position with a brand told me they had done an analysis like this. They had basically done an analysis between the value of a fitter versus the value of a salesperson. And basically, once an established program, there's actually more of a value to the fitter. But again, like that's a simple thing for me to say, and I don't want to feel people that feel dissuaded from this or feel like I'm challenging convictions. I think for me, I'd like to hear a little bit more about those barriers, because usually I hear the same thing you do, Greg, which is space, or the idea that someone would be coming off the sales floor. So your salesperson now becomes a fitter versus a salesperson. And so how do I meet the demand of who's walking in the shop if I have an employee who's now doing this fit? But anyway, I'd like to hear from some other people first before I chime in my thoughts.
Yeah, Happy.
You're muted, Happy.
Sorry about that. One of the things that we're neglecting is, what do you get when you get a fitter in the shop?
Happy, we can't.
What do you get when you get a fitter in the shop that you didn't already have? You get wisdom. Can you hear me?
No, Happy.
Let me try it from another source. I'll be back in a second.
Beth, do you have anything to add? I'm just thinking, I'm looking at you and I'm thinking you might have something, not to call you out, but I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think, because we're a smaller retailer, as you know, I think equipment tends to be the biggest barrier for people. I've been fitting for many, many, many years prior to when fitting was popular. And then I was trained at Specialized as well. And I know a lot of the bigger brands are pushing the move the bikes that, you know, that you can adjust, the retool, all of the electronics that quickly add up to 25 grand or more. And I think that's a big barrier for especially the small to moderate size retailers. And I will say personally, I actually sold back my retool. I feel like people aren't looking at the rider anymore. They're looking at their screens and they're just trying to hit a range. And I've had people come in with, had one guy come in with 6 shims in one shoe between under the footbed and under the cleat. And it was obvious that someone was trying to hit a range, you know, instead of looking at the rider. So I guess my biggest thing is don't get focused on the equipment. You can do it with a simple plumb bob and a goniometer. All you need is some education on the body and on position. And to me, that's one of the biggest barriers.
Thanks, Beth. Yeah, that's really great feedback, because I do hear that too, the cost of getting the equipment to get started. You know, I didn't tell the panel members that I was going to come up with this question, but I'm thinking about the state of the industry that we're in. When we don't have this large selection of bikes in front of us, we have people who are coming in, and maybe some cases we're having to pre-order bikes that we're going to wait a long time, or we're in a situation where there's a bike on the floor that may or may not be the right size. Any tips for retailers who are struggling right now and they want to make sure they get the right fit for the customer, so when that bike comes in 4 months from now, it is right? I'm just thinking about that struggle that we're finding ourselves in right now. Greg?
Yeah, I mean, that is a difficult struggle. And you know, to Beth's point, you know, bike fit is about the person performing it. I mean, I love technology. Technology is amazing, and there are some, you know, really good available technologies out there. But if you are really good at your process, that stuff can make you better. It doesn't do the fit for you, and it never will. And it shouldn't. You know, there are some really, really, really smart people sitting in front of me right now, and the computers in their heads are way more valuable than you know, any device that you can aim at somebody. Now, with that said, you know, is it easier sometimes, to your point, Heather, if you don't have a bicycle in front of you, in order to use a sizing device like the one behind me to be able to get somebody lined up and make sure that they're going to be on a bike that's going to work for their body? Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that's easier to do. But you know, if they have a bicycle, or you have a bicycle on the floor that's close, you can get a good idea of where they should be and what, you know, within what parameters they should be in. Even if you're on a bike that's a little too small, let's say, and you've had to you're using your adjustable stem, and it's way longer than you would want it to be on an actual bike, you can back in different geometries as long as you can kind of figure out where their butt and their hands and their feet should be. You can build geometries around that and compare that to other bicycles. So it does take a little bit more time and a little bit more attention to do that, but it is a way to do that if you don't currently have a size cycle, and you have some sort of a bicycle to get them on. You can usually figure out, you know, within reason what a good position would be for that person.
Porrick, did you have something to add there too?
Yeah, so Beth, I wanted to echo what you said and ask you a question. So, and this is cheeky, I'm going to apologize in advance. This is a very cheeky question I'm going to ask. If there was, hypothetically speaking, a $3,000 size cycle that you could plug into a smart trainer and use as a smart trainer, I see you laughing, Swifty, that you could have as a demo center as well for your smart trainers, and was super easy to use, not as sophisticated and as expensive as some of the other tools, but it would allow you to simulate a hybrid that maybe you don't have, or allow you to simulate other things, and had software to help you find bikes quickly, but was inexpensive and focused and able to use the tools you have. Do you think for the average retailer in the age of the smart trainer, something like that solves significant problems?
Absolutely. And I want to clarify, I'm definitely not criticizing technology. You know, retool and all of the the tools that are out there are excellent, and we need them. And to Greg's point, I think they do contribute to a good fitter. I think the issue was more of about the blocking of retailers getting into the fit industry to begin with. And
Right.
so while I think that technology is important and also great for an advanced fitter, my point was more just that don't let it stop you from getting into fitting, you know, not to have that equipment. But absolutely, I think that I hear that all the time, that the cost of the equipment now is, when you try to calculate out how many fittings you need to do to make up for the cost of the equipment, if you just put math into it, it's a lot of fits. So to answer your question, yes, I think that would be great. And again, to Greg's point, I think there is a place for technology for sure.
It's about 250 to 275 fits for a $30,000 to $40,000 investment at $250 a fit.
And I see Paul has his hand up too. Yep.
Let me just say one last thing. And Beth, I 100% agree with you that the amount of money to get in is insane. And we've been working through the pandemic on something that when we can teach again, and when guys like Paul and John and I and Greg can teach again, you know, I want to reduce that cost of, and I'm sure Q has some plans to teach as well with Damon, but we really want to make the cost for the average store to be able to have nice, affordable tools and be sub $5,000 all in. That's my goal in that, because I think there's a lot of legs in that space. And I think putting people on bikes, making them happy is as important as bikes leaving, you know. I want to turn bike owners into bike enthusiasts. And we've created a lot of bike owners during this pandemic. If we want them to stay, if we were going to retain 10 or 20 of those, 10 or 20% of those, like, you know, Wall Street is forecasting, we have to do a better job making them happy and making them love and use their bikes and need lots of tires and lots of other stuff to keep us all healthy. I'll let Paul.
Pork, that was amazing. Yeah, Paul, what do you have?
Well, I'm still trying to figure out what the topic was when we first started talking here and about retail in the bicycle shop. And, you know, as Pork has, you know, noted to me, I'm kind of a bottom feeder. That means I hang out in local bike shops. You know, if there's 5,000, I hang out in the lower 1, 2, or 3,000 bike shops, because my goal is every bike shop can do a good bike fit, even if you are in the bottom 4,000 or 5,000 or 3,000. One of the things that's been done, that's been slammed down their throats, is if you go to, and I love Dan Enfield, but the expense of getting in, that's crazy. And I think the other one is we're all trying to create these big expensive things. Well, how about we create a bike fitter? Where there's hundreds and hundreds of bike fitters that spent $1,000, became really good bike fitters, and then we gravitate them up into the more expensive equipment. One of the things that frustrated retail is that's why I came out with an app that was $20. 20. A goniometer is $45. This app does more than retool, and you can project it to a television. And I'm trying to help the retailer on the lot of the lower 3,000, 4,000 retailers that are just, you know, some local shop, be able to do a good bike fit. Now, there's things like this. You can incorporate little products like a saddle changer, which costs $300-400. You can start selling saddles in the retail area, but you can buy it in the bike fit area. There's so many ways to get in this industry for almost no money. And by the way, I commend Pork for bringing that stuff down. But if you make a good bike fitter first, they answer so many questions as they climb up the ladder. People spend $10,000 and don't know how to do a bike fit. That's one of the big problems. Then they spend $5,000. Let them spend $1,000. Let them spend like $1,000 on stuff. Let them start making money right away out the door doing half bike fits. And then you can expand more in your retail. Too many guys, why, you know, people want to buy a sizing cycle. Go online, find one used. Don't buy a new one. Now, Pork, your price is coming down. I commend you on that. But we don't help them by coming in like that. I agree with what Beth says. I think you create a bike fitter first, all the things you talked about, all the mumble jumbo, hocus pocus, all that stuff, you know, good with people, good with this, good with that, at a really affordable rate. Then, you know, am I a good bike fitter or not? Well, I only spent $1,000 now. I'm a good bike fitter. Well, I'm going to spend another $1,000 or another $1,000.
Yeah. So Paul, thank you. And I'm so appreciative of everyone lending to this conversation. I want to go back to Damon for a second, because I really want to talk about the customer experience, the customer journey, and how retailers can get that proper communication going with, having a fit area in their store, having their sales staff communicate the importance of fit. Do we have a fit menu? Let's just broad stroke it, because I don't think enough retailers actually have this set up in their retail environment. Why is it so important, Damon?
Sorry, Heather, you put a bunch of stuff on there. So why generally is the experience important, you're asking?
Yeah, how can we just simply get set up in the retail environment? Why is it important?
Well, I mean, I think, first of all, I think a lot of people have given some awesome thoughts here. So I want to echo the thoughts that are coming in, and I appreciate the honesty and the information we're getting. I think I go back, and I don't want to echo this too many times because I don't want to get into particulars of individual shops, such as menus and information and pricing. But I do want to say this. People want personalization, right? So I think I agree to the point saying now of not spending too much, making the barriers too big. But individually, I think the question you ask yourself as a shop owner or employee of shop is, how is my experience different? How am I providing something different than someone just buying from me? Because what's the difference between you and somebody else? The brands that you carry, the prices that you have, which is going to be a race to the bottom if you keep changing pricing. So I think it's that the consumer wants personalization, right? So small little side anecdote situation here is, and I don't mean to bring up other brands, but it's fun to do this. Tesla is the #1 customer satisfaction car. And there's lots of reasons for that. And I'm sure some of you have opinions on this, but one of those leading factors is because of the level of personalization. So of course, in your car, you can adjust your seats and move it around, right? But Tesla's like another level. If there's any owners in this group, you can attest to this, of the level of, if you have multiple drivers, it changes the suspension, the brakes, the lighting for that individual person. And people love that. People want that personalized experience. So I think we think about that in the retail environment is like, how do we create a personalized sales experience? But I can't imagine a more personalized sales experience that without incorporating fitting, right? Because that's the ultimate personalization. Paul was talking about questions, asking, getting deeper, learning about the person, learning about their needs, learning about what they want to do, learning that they have goals in multiple years to ride different formats, different kinds of bikes. They're new to it. They're really excited. They want to go outside. They're going to start training to do a longer ride or to climb a mountain. That information that we glean is valuable, and it's an experience we provide. If I've learned anything of being on this earth for a while, it's people love to talk about themselves. And you as a retailer, that's data that's really important to you that creates a relationship, not just a person as a sale, right? It becomes this symbiosis. And I think that's what we're really trying to create with fitting.
Yeah. And I'm going back to thinking about my time working with Beth when I was working with Bianchi and Merckx, and we were having to pre-order bikes for customers. And Beth was doing everything she could to make sure that the bike that she was selecting, that we had to wait for, that was going to be the right size. And she was communicating with her sales rep, which was me, to, talk about the bike, to best dial it in. We're having to do that a lot right now, but we're investing a lot of time up front with customers, right? And we're banking on that when this bike comes in, it's going to be the right size. The customer's still going to be ready and willing to wait for it. And Greg, anything to talk about there, like that time investment that we're making up front and why it is important to do that, and it does pay off.
It pays off in for everybody involved, really. I mean, so or it should. The reality is that the amount of information that a cyclist gets from a competent bike fitter is invaluable, really. And I will have to say that it hurts me a bit that I still speak to retailers that don't value the fit themselves, that give it away. It's a real lost opportunity, because in the consumer's eyes, you also now devalue it to the consumer as well. I mean, this is something that, everybody here has spent hours and hours and hours and hours of their life either doing or training or learning about. And when you invest in the time to do this stuff, it is absolutely worth something. It's worth something to the person who's going through the process, but it should also be really worth something to the shop that's giving it. I've seen too many retailers that are just willing to say, all right, well, man, I feel bad. I'm charging them a bunch of money for this bicycle, and I'm going to charge them for a bike fit on top of that. It seems like I'm loading on. But I go back to what I said earlier, is that the bike fit is the bicycle itself is a thing. It's a piece of equipment. The experience of riding the bike and what you get out of it is really brought home by having that bike, as Damon said, customized to you to improve that relationship with the bicycle. I mean, we all talk about having relationships with our bike. We get that new bike and it comes home and it lives in our house for a while, right? It lives in the living room where you can look at it every day, and we get excited about it. And building that excitement and building that conduit for these people to enjoy that, but also to retain a customer is paramount. And another side note to that I think is an enormous opportunity, in addition to our kind of small little retail box that we sometimes focus on. If we open our eyes up a little bit and we take a step back, another company in this industry, it's a little bit more fitness, but Peloton, for instance, they've exploded. And I believe this is an area that local bike shops should be capitalizing on, because as a fitter, you should be fitting those. And once they start learning a little bit more about cycling, then those people are going to want shoes. And I see Mr. Swift down there talking about this stuff all the time, and making sure that those interactions are positive for them as well. And who knows that I believe that there's potential that if somebody really gets excited about riding indoors and they build their confidence and they build their fitness, then maybe they become an outdoor customer for you as well. But there are opportunities, I think, that exist. And to Beth's point, the other thing I wanted to talk about as far as time investment is concerned is that you don't always have to have fitting in-house to have a good fitting program. When I started as a bike fitter, I didn't work for a shop. I worked for myself. And I built relationships with the shops around me. And I have a little different angle because I'm I come from medicine. And so I was looking for people that were hurt and broken. But you don't have to invest anything in your shop environment if you've got a good bike fitter, independent bike fitter in your area, and you're willing to have a good conversation with that person and understand that there's benefit from both of you. They're not a threat. They're an ally in selling bikes, in selling equipment. So you could literally invest nothing and still have a good fitting program if you've got a good independent bike fitter in your area.
I love that you brought that up. I was down at Kyle's in Orlando, Florida, and they have a relationship with an outside fitter who comes in. I see so many hands up. I saw Larry. Larry, did you have something to add in? You're on mute. You probably know.
I'm sorry to have been such, I put it in the chat, a fit denier. But what I like to take home from these, I call them these new people. As I say, I started my first fitting schooling in 1974 or 5 when Jackie Symes and Dave Chauner, Olympic type people, came around to bike shops and they did fit clinics. And boy, we sold a lot of stems and bars. They would just ride along next to you and point at you and say, get a wider bar. We sold a lot of wider bars that afternoon. Since then, probably put maybe 6 figures into equipment, sending people around the country, and a lot of training. And what the biggest take home from these guys is that what they do with the care and the hands-on and the fruit bowl and the nice music and the white lab coats and all that, you create an experience. And there is something about that part of it that I can understand. But for me, it's just not, pardon the pun, a good fit. We had a sign up once that said, we fix $250 studio fits for $25. The first one was a doctor that came in and says, Larry, I got great news. I want a bike fitting for $150. It was normally $300, but it was a charity auction. I got it for $150. bike still doesn't fit right. We went out and rode for 5-10 minutes. I changed a couple of things around, and he's been brimming ever since. This doesn't always happen. And as I say, I am a denier, but after all these years, I do appreciate the enthusiasm and energy of these gentlemen that are here today and what they're doing, and that they have the time, energy, and place to do it. So I love it. One question I have, though, it's a question time, is the fitting methods, and a lot of it's based on empirical data. I know my first fit kit, I bought 4 of those things back in the day, is based on a lot of empirical data. And I think I remember the last page saying, if none of this stuff works for you, feel free to make minor adjustments so your customer is comfortable. But is this anything like a wheel motor versus bottom bracket motor in the new electric wave, or Betamax versus VHS? Because you have so many different kinds of systems today. So that's the question I have, is there any consistency among the data that they use in the method? And
Larry,
I'm done.
I don't think that we have a lot of different systems. I think we have different educators, and you have several of these educators in front of you right now. You know, John Higgins, Paul Swift, Happy Freeman, Park McGlynn, myself. We don't have secret sauce. We don't. We have ways that we teach that resonate better with some people than others. You know, when people come and take my coursework, I encourage them to go take coursework with Perrick, or take coursework with Paul, or anybody, or John, or anybody that has coursework out there, because I expect that you're a smart person, and I'm going to give you a framework to work from. But people are imperfect. People are messy, and bike fitting is not a simple process. I think this industry has always wanted it to be a simple process, but it's not. It takes time. It takes attention. We've been talking a lot about experience and relationship building, but you have to listen. You have to have the time to do it. And if you don't have the time, then you shouldn't do it, because then you're doing a disservice to that person. And I don't really think you are a denier. I mean, you went out and put your own flavor on what was going on with that person, and you helped them, right? So if you've been in the industry that long, whether or not you've got a formal education from one of our fit schools or not, you're going to have some opinions on how these things work. And so, I don't necessarily think that qualifies you as a fit denier. Maybe it qualifies you as someone who doesn't offer fit in your studio, or call it that. But again, I hear you picking on the $300 fit, but fit is worth that. Fit is worth that all day long.
Thanks, Greg. I want to get to Happy, because
Yes,
I just want to make sure we get back to him. I see Paul. I'm so sorry. I'm just trying to make sure I get everyone in. Happy?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good. First off, Paul, I love the shirt. Second of all, what $350 fit? It's a $450 fit. Actually, the reason I called is because we're talking about retail. You need to think, what is going to be best for me in retail as a fitter? I anticipate when a 47 centimeter frame gets taken out of the box with a pair of 44 handlebars, I'm not leaving the bars out. I'm going to switch down to a 36 or a 38 and put it on the floor. The point is, if you think like a fitter, you see like a fitter, you listen like a fitter, you anticipate. Don't put things on the floor that you know aren't going to sell the way they are. Make things work for your customers so that when they're getting there, you get down with resistance because it doesn't feel quite right. Adapt a bike to meet a person's needs before they know it needs to be adapted. Little things like that. And if you need more, you can push a full fit. And if you've got somebody who's injured, you may need one of us out there. If you've got a hip replacement customer, you definitely need one of us out there. I fit with about a dozen shops in a 10-mile radius of where I work. I'm in Manhattan, so it's not hard. You need to take the skill sets, otherwise you're going to create a lot of bedroom coat racks.
Happy, that's really great
And
feedback.
by
And it makes,
coat rack, that
sorry, Happy, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
we're fine.
It made me think that I want to tell any retailers who are listening, if you want the contact information of any of the fitters on this webinar, reach out to me and I can send you their email addresses. And Paul, I see you have something to add too.
Yeah, I think it's on us when it comes to whatever you want to call them, fit denier, you want to call these barriers of entry. It's really on us, and that's why I've striven. I strive really hard to like come up with ways to get in that are lower and easier, but yet show them how to make money. I mean, I was frustrated, for example, with the expensive software. So coming out with a $20 app that is in your pocket and showing, dealers how to carry around in their pocket a little app that I've used that warming up for bike races and just showing people and getting them involved for $20 by showing things like a saddle changer and with Greg bringing up the Peloton. I mean, I'm on a forum right now. The complaint, the saddle. They don't know where to go, what to do, how to do. We got to provide it. We got to show these dealers how to do this. I constantly get dealers online. Happy's right. When you go to a bike shop, when they open the bike, picture what that person's going to look like. Try and do a little preset. That's awesome stuff. But by bringing it way down, and so what I've done with like something like a saddle changer, it's bike fitting. It's selling a saddle. But what it is, it's showing people how to get the return on investment, show them a little spreadsheet, show them how to double their saddle sales in 1 year for less effort, less money, and make better customers. Show them how to improve their ordering process so they have less dead weight on the saddle, how to reduce their returns. I mean, I think we got to bring it down to this level to get into the bike shop. It's great for the top 100 or 200 or whatever, that's awesome. They don't need our hand to hold their hand. But I think we owe it to bring it way down and introduce it much slower, a little spoon feeding. And that's why I do things like the saddle change. You don't have to know anything about it. Just put people on different saddles, make money, make them happy on a Peloton. Maybe they become a bike rider. I mean, what Greg mentioned, 238 fits or whatever to do some investment return. How about show them something that they can spend $300 or $400 and make that money back in 1 month and then make profit the rest of the year? I got more, but that's it for that.
I know, Paul, I love this. I think we should have like a monthly fit call and just help retailers. Anyone who's on this call, I'd love to do that. Porek, I saw your hand up a lot too. I wanted to make sure I gave you a chance if you had something to add to it. It's taken me a while to get back to you. I'm sorry.
No worries. So I wanted to go back to your original question about things that retailers can do in a pandemic and some strategies around that. And I think, philosophically, anybody who's interested in fit, the first thing that they have to decide is they have to decide in their store what that delineation is between sizing and fitting. And sizing is what you're going to give to a person for free to get them on the right bike, the right size, so they can enjoy it right away. That's, to me, what sizing is. And one of the challenges that stores get themselves into is they start giving away the kitchen sink with sizing. So I think delineating what sizing is extremely important. And if you're going to do fitting, deciding what that is, and everybody doing the same thing. And I agree with Paul, I agree with Greg, I agree with Damon. Education is a key piece of that. I agree with Beth. And a trainer, plumb bob, and goniometer, you can do all of that. But I think putting what you're doing for your clients into organized buckets and deciding what those things are is very important. As far as the pandemic is concerned, and especially in our current environment of integrated cockpits and one-piece bars and those sort of things, pre-sizing, as in the person really hasn't figured out what they need and you have to order it and it has a lead time, that is becoming massively important because of, if you have a busy store and you've got to tear a cockpit apart and it's fully integrated, it takes a boatload of time. And Happy made a great point earlier, if you know something isn't going to work and you're going to put it on the floor with the wrong size bar, because 99% of the time you change the bar, those kind of things become very important. So even if at a cursory level, you know, the 48 centimeter bike comes with a 42 centimeter bar or whatever it comes with, having the pre-knowledge that when that bike comes in, that it can be built the right way, it's got the right lead stem on there, and you have the ability to simulate kind of what that bike's like. And the simplest way to do that is take a bike down off the floor. There's the same geometry. It doesn't even have to be the same model, but at least make sure you don't torpedo your service department when the bike arrives and the person's here for new bike day and they're all excited and they want to get on the bike, and you go, oh, hang on a second, this is all wrong. So I think getting them through that process, it's a trainer, it can be a plumb bob and a goniometer, it can be just make sure the bike is level and decide what's the difference between sizing and fitting. I think those things fundamentally make a huge difference. And then from a procedural standpoint, and this is in my opinion, the reason that fit fails in stores more often than anything else is we would never give a person a work stand and a bunch of tools and say, there you go, service department, off you go. We do that all the time with BikeFit. There's no policies or procedures, or this is how it works, this is how stem stops. So proceduralizing how you do BikeFit and having processes that, you know, if you size a customer for a bike, how does the stem turn into a special order? How does the bar turn into a special order? How does the right stuff arrive? How does that get onto the service ticket? When the bike comes in, the bike leaves with the minimum amount of touch points, not because you don't want to spend extra time with the customer, but if Johnny who sold the bike isn't in, there has to be a system to make sure that all that pre-fitting information makes it into a work order, makes it onto the bike in the right position. And then when that person comes and picks up that bike, they're blown away by the experience because everybody used their brains and there was a process and everybody followed the same process.
I love that. So I love that. We were supposed to stop at 2. I just had thinking about what you just said, Park, I had a question I wanted to put out to Damon. If you have to go, thank you for being here. But if you want to hang just a couple minutes longer, I'm thinking, you're the fitters, or we have the person who is maybe the owner or the manager thinking fit. What about the staff? How do we get the staff behind us, Damon? And how do we get the rest of our team thinking like we are as fitters?
Yeah, that's a great question. I want to kind of piggyback a little bit on what Pork said as well. I think one of the issues that, when you talk about do we have the data that says why fitting isn't as pervasive or why you start at a store and it goes away? One of the concerns I've heard is there's a level of consistency, which is an issue, right? So you go to a store and person in the service department says X about fit, salesperson says X about fit, the store manager says this about fit, but they're not there because they're dealing with business. So you're getting different messages. So a customer could have a totally different experience or just say, oh no, our fitter's not here, we can't talk to you about that. There needs to be a consistent message. And I'm not saying that everybody needs to be trained for 15 years and have the incredible experience of the people in this group, but certainly the message at your shop should be consistent, right? So to your point, Heather, to your question, it's, how do I get the shop on board? How do I get this team on board with believing in the benefits? I could guarantee right now, if you go through shops and you ask employees, there's going to be somebody that comes back and says, well, I never got a fit and I won the 1985 off-road downhill shinger bobber. Like there's those stories that exist because there are incredibly adaptable humans. A lot of them are called professional bike racers who are riding on tiny frames and they can make it work. But for the rest of us human population of 99.999, that's not necessarily the case, right? We need that personalization. So I think the big picture here is like, how do I get the staff to see the benefits that this provides to the cyclist? How do I get the staff and everybody to agree that this provides a value? Like show each person that big picture and get that consistent message. So not the specifics of how do I fit, but the consistency of the benefit and what you provide.
Yeah, and I see Paul. Paul, you had something to add there too.
I'm sorry, I'm unmuted. I hope I wasn't making noise. Absolutely agree that you need to get the other employees involved and on board. I mean, one, you got to give them a fit if that's not part of it. They have to have the experience. You have to bring them in as much as possible. And I know I talk about little products like a saddle changer, but that's so everybody in the shop can touch something to change someone's life. That's so you can get a conversation going to understand people. It's one of the most intimate parts of your body. That's to get things and people involved. People talk about a plumb bob and a goniometer. It's $20 and someone can at least take like their little position and put their knee angle on and go, here's what you look like. I know what it's like when I take the goniometer and I go, here's what you look like. It's not the same thing. You can train the employee, and I've done this in a few shops. 5 minutes. Here's a little something to make you a little different. Here's a little something to set your side when you go to another shop. You don't do that. This is 5-minute training. 5 minutes. This is not big stuff. It's not rocket science, and it's just a little thought of reaching out and getting them involved, fit them, show them how to maybe do quick side view in 5 minutes, show them how to maybe change a saddle, Daryl, I'm sure, Beth, I know you've done stuff that's how you get them involved. I mean, forget shooting up here, guys. We're down here. I'm boots on the ground, man. I started bike fitting on a sidewalk, living in a garage with no hot water, no heater. People kept coming back. Why? Because they liked what was going on and the bike fitting, the things you offered. You don't need any of that stuff. You just got to get the people on board, and it's easy. If they can't figure it out, it's on us to go in and show them how to figure it out.
I think Paul's amazing. And it's making me think when we did fitting at our store, it was an opportunity also to teach the customer how to shift, teach them about the bike. Just, everyone thinks their hands might need to be in the drops the whole time. That's not actually the case. Just about their pedal stroke. We're almost out of time. I really, truly feel like we should do a monthly one of these. It's awesome. Greg, anything you're thinking about just to bring it back to you? Sorry to just to point out, call on you, but just to wrap it up here for us.
Yeah, and again, I think to your point, this is a conversation that should probably continue and could continue ad nauseum. But one of the things that triggered in my mind, and I have to kind of put my foot down on this in that we're hearing a lot about customer experience and all of that kind of stuff, and building our building the education, building the community, all of that stuff, and that stuff is massively important with regards to fit. One of the things that I think this industry should be really careful of, and the reason this popped into my head is Porg was talking about, in COVID times, is that one of the things, and some colleagues of mine that I know are doing this, is doing remote bike fitting, not being in person to do this stuff. The argument there was, don't let, great get in the way of good, or just do something for somebody. And, unfortunately, I think it's something that is a very slippery slope for our industry. Having BikeFit and creating that that relationship. I mean, you are all here on Zoom, and it's great to see all your faces, but it is a very different experience to be in front of somebody. And the other thing that I want to point out is that not everybody that you're going to work with has competency in fixing their own bike. To Porg's point, we've got a lot of bikes that are coming in with integrated cockpits, and trying to do a bike fitting remotely where you can't see whether or not the person's got their bolts torqued correctly or even knows how to use a torque wrench is an incredibly dangerous thing to do. Yeah, I understand that getting bike fits to people is an important thing. But I also think that, as fitters, as people in this industry, we want people coming into brick and mortar shops, and allowing a service like what we're providing to be an online service, I think will detract from what it is that we do on a day-to-day basis. That may be controversial for some of you, and you may disagree with me, but I had to take the opportunity to say it. I don't think it's a good idea.
Greg, I have to tell you, the Big Gear Show was the first time I saw a lot of people in person. And I remember commenting to Rochelle, oh my God, that person doesn't look anything like they do on Zoom. And it hit me hard. Like, I thought people were tall and they were, so I hear what you're saying. Damon, just to give you an opportunity to, anything else on your mind to wrap it up?
Yeah, the only final thought, and Pork brought this back, so thank you for doing this and connecting, is if I had to give one thing to retailers right now, obviously pandemic, we don't want to talk about supply chain. I have to be the person to say that horrible word. I know we're concerned about that idea of sizing and inventory, but I give this suggestion, which didn't come from me, it came from some of our sales team, which is, if you don't have any bikes to sell, call the last 100 customers who bought bikes from you and ask them how they feel. Not how's their bike, how do they feel? You know, how's their saddle? You know, are they riding? Are they still being consistent? You know, have you seen them in a while? Opportunity for education, to talk about service, to book a fit, but give a call to the last 100 bikes, the people you sold, and have a conversation, because that's going to keep your business alive and keep this relationship and customer experience going.
I love that. And I see Neil just put a chat in, what percentage of the 250 plus fittings that are done by bike shops in the US are worth the price that was paid? You know, that's something that's a great question. That's something to think about. You know, I welcome this conversation to keep going. I see we need a customer survey. I love that idea too. I don't want today's conversation to be the end. I want this just to be a spark. My email is heather@mbda.com. I can connect anyone together. I would welcome everyone who is here today to do this again. Maybe we choose a specific topic. I'm not quite sure within fitting, but let this just be the spark. Thank you so much for joining today. Thanks for staying on extra. Yeah, it's so nice to meet everyone, and I hope to do this again. We'll be in touch. Rochelle and I have your emails. We'll reach out to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.